Hi everyone, on to round 4 with Bradford Congress now on a Sunday morning. And like I said in last video, I was getting a law rated for the first time in this tournament, a 129 called Darren Bedford as white. So I was expected to win, although I've heard off sources that he is undergraded and gets coaching off Andrew Martin. And so they're probably there for his opening theory because you know Martin sweats openings. And also we'd seen the draw come up, and he knew that I'd done videos that he admitted in the morning, and he obviously studied a few to get my style of playing openings, and knew that I hated the Dutch, but thankfully he didn't play the Dutch, so I didn't get hacked up, or could get hacked up by what he plays instead, but I wasn't going to get hacked up by the Dutch. But anyway, I was white, and played d4, d5, c4. I was worried he might do the Albin because he says he likes open tactical games, but I got the Slav instead, and the mainline Slav with d takes c4, where black's giving up the centre, but getting some dynamism in return, and it's very solid as well, like the bishop coming to f5. I played one at main lines, if not the main line, with a4, which stops a b5, which should protect the pawn, because if I got e4 straight away, it can be met by b5. And now he stops e4 with bishop f5. And I played e3 instead, and after e6, bishop takes c4, bishop b4, we are mainline Slav territory. And black's getting a good grip on e4, but in a lot of lines that f5 bishop's going to be swapped off for the f3 knight. That's probably the best line as well, to try and exploit the imbalance where you've got two bishops, and in a lot of lines of superior pawn structure against a bishop and knight, but yeah, waste time to do it, and black's got a solid position with no weaknesses, and the pawns on c6 and e6 make d5 very strong, and almost like a stranglehold. Both sides castled short, and now I did the my plan of knight h4, but probably in the wrong position, because he can play. He could have played bishop g4, and if f3, then bishop h5. Although it looks like I've got a nice tempo to play e4 and then e5, it's flawed because if e4, bishop takes c3 and knight takes e4, or even knight takes e4 straight away because my knight on h4 is unprotected, so that would be rather bad. But thankfully he doesn't play that and plays bishop g6, and after knight takes g6, h takes g6 because he can't take with the f pawn, because although I'd give him f line pressure, he's here to e6 pawn and drop with check, so it'd be strategically good but tactically dreadful. And now we have reached probably the end of my opening knowledge, and as usual I'm faced with a problem that when I know quite a few moves of theory, but when I leave the theory I just don't know what to do, all the plans, play moves like a headless chicken. So let's look at a few plans, because it's better to have a plan than no plan at all. So let's select some candidates. One is an interesting pawn set by Houdini, which only players will probably consider with e4. So you'd think black could just play bishop takes c3, b takes c3, removing the guard, and now knight takes e4. But white does get two bishops against two knights and some dangerous pressure in turn for pawn, with queen d3, knight d6, and bishop a3. And black has to be careful, these two bishops aren't going to massacre his position. And white's got more than enough compensation with counter engines. Maybe it's best not to take this pawn, but then white gets a strong centre. So maybe if I reach this position again, then maybe 11 e4 exclamation mark question mark's the best move, and it might provide some uncomfortable surprises for my opponents. Also an interesting move maybe is queen b3, just maybe developing the queen, attacking the bishop, but then that's just met by queen b6, bishop d2, knight b d7, and black's easy development, solid position, and control of d5 give him a set equal chances. White's not got much out of this. Another queen move is queen c2, which is interesting, maybe even threatening some lines. Bishop takes c6 and queen takes g6 if white wasn't so passive. But knight b d7, h3, c5, striking back at white's centre before white can do anything with it. Rook d1, chop, chop, queen e7, and again maybe e5 next. And again, white can't expect much of this position. It's equal, I'd say. It's not a very small advantage to white, because black is a little bit cramped. But this is nothing for white. This pretty harmless. But all these moves are better than the 11th move I played, which throws away any advantage white gets from moving first, and even starts to give it to black if he plays accurately. I played knight e2, question mark, exclamation mark, just a horrible passive move. Recycling a knight at kingside. I don't know what I'm thinking of attacking for, when the Slav solid and can't really be hacked. Knight bd7 was played, just developing sensibly and preparing c5, which is going to disintegrate my centre if I'm not careful. And now I just continue my dubious plan with knight g3. Don't know what the knight's doing, because he's not exactly going to hack his kingside up with all them pawns covering it, am I? A bit stupid. An interesting move is f3, preparing e4 and a steamroll in the centre, so black needs to use the traditional method of countering. The best response to a central attack is a flank attack, like the best response to a flank attack is a centre attack, so he counters with c5. And after bishop d2, queen a5, takes, queen b3, takes. We transpose to a line in the game, but with a difference. White's knight is on e2, not g3, and white's pawn is on f2, f3 instead of f2. This favours white for two reasons. One, the move the e4 can be played, and two, if black takes on d4, I take back with a knight and will not get landed with an IQP. So anyway, back to the game. Knight g3 is played, and now he hits me with c5, and I played bishop d2. The interesting alternative is to go after the b7 point, because like every pawn move creates a weakness, and because the pawns on c6 and b7 would blunt a queen on f3, they wouldn't now. So queen f3, chop on d4, take back, and white's landed with this IQP. And after knight b6 attacking the bishop and threatening queen takes d4, white looks to be in trouble, but if the d4 and b7 pawns get swapped off, it won't be too bad for white, and that's what's probably going to happen. And if not, then if the black guards the b7 pawn after bishop moves, then say bishop e3, should be fine for white. I'd played bishop d2, which is also fine, and now queen a5. Also good is bishop takes d2, queen takes d2, c takes, e takes, rook c8. And again, black's at least equal, maybe even trying for an advantage, because of my weak isolated pawn, and black's pressured out c line. But this sort of plays into white's plans, which is probably why I avoided it, because bishop takes d2, I'm getting the tempo of my queen. So I think with queen a5 it was more in his plans, because he's developing his own queen. I'm provoking bishop takes b4, which I played, and after queen takes b4, I've got my bishop and pawn on pre. And I could play, have played b3, and after rook fd8, queen f3, knight b6, queen takes b7, c takes, e takes, rook db8, queen f3, knight takes, pawn takes, queen takes. If you take stock of this position, I've lost my bishop against knight advantage. I've got an isolated pawn with mostly heavy pieces remaining on the board, and that's when they are their most weak, when it's just a pure heavy piece endgame. His knight's going to easily blockade on d5, he's got pressure down b line, and all in all white's in probably a spot of trouble here, despite the rather equal evaluation the engines gave. But I'm sure most of you, and I'll get backed up in the comments, I hope, would rather be black in this position, and I would be as well. I'm sure Darren would be as well. Back to the game. I played queen b3, and we transposed to a line early, but with a difference, which means that I ended up landed with an awful isolated pawn. After queen takes b3, bishop takes b3, cd, ed, and this opening has not been a success at all for white. He's lost all his advantage and even given it to black, and only really black can hope to win this position. Now, because this is going to be quite a short video compared to my half an hour ones, I'm going to have a bit of a waffle about IQPs. First of all, if you're the attacker, which I am, these are the things you should do. You should try and exploit the squares that it's protecting, which are e5 and c5 in this case. Now I'll apply all the rules to this game to show you how bad white's position is. First of all, there's practically no chance I'm going to get a knight to e5 or c5, and at the moment they just get taken off anyway. Secondly, you should look to advance the isolated pawn. This can have two advantages. One, it gets closer to its queen square and can act as a battering ram. Or two, it could swap itself off for another, like a healthy pawn, or maybe even inflict the other guy with a bad pawn of his own. However, there's no chance of that happening in this position because there's only my bishop protecting d5 and potentially rooks, whereas he's got 2 pieces on it and he'll have more when he goes knight b6 on move 17 and then rook d8. So it's not advancing or going anywhere soon. Also, you need to have the initiative, which I haven't got. The only advantage I've got in compensation is the bishop against the knight. And my opponent's pawn structure is a bit dodgy, but that king side pawn Jota he's got that's like doubled. It's actually quite solid. It's gonna be hard to break that down. It's a lot more solid than my isolated pawn anyway. And also you need to like keep pieces on, and the queens have already come off, and 2 pairs of minor pieces, which ain't good. If you're the defender, which black is, you want to control the square in front of the pawn, so this pawn isn't going anywhere. Knight b6 to d5 is going to occur, and the pawn's not going to be going at all. You need to try and swap pieces off, so Darren's task will be to get rid of some pieces and then maybe win the king and pawn endgame that could come out of it. Because this would be a lost king and pawn endgame, I think, if it was one. Also, you need to like watch out for white's pieces coming to the squares that it controls, and watch out for your opponent's attacking chances. The queens are off, and that knight's not going anywhere soon to e5 or c5. So, all in all, black's not got anything to interfere. And also, you need to apply direct pressure to the pawn, and it's an easy target on half open file. This isn't quite a nightmare position because white's got compensation in the form of a strong bishop and black having double pawns. So it's only a slight advantage to black, but white can't expect much. So knight b6 was played, and now either this move or the move after. Maybe Dan could tell me if he's watching this game. I punted the draw offer because I thought I'm slightly worse, but I'm also high rated, so maybe it's going to motivate his. He might be a bit scared to play on because he might think, oh, I can get a draw against someone 12 points higher, and then he might like overpress if he tries to win and lose. So it'd be risky in playing on, but there isn't much risk involved really. So he brightly declines after a few minutes thought. If you don't get too much, you might as well play this on. There's not much chance of losing it. I've got the weaknesses. So rook fd1, which is a move I think I offered the draw with, but it may have been the one after. I'm just anticipating a rook coming to d-line, pressuring the pawn directly. Rook ac8, taking charge of the c-line, and after rook ac1, I think the correct way for black to keep an advantage of about 20 hundredths of a pawn is rook fd8, rook takes, and f3, and then white's idea is to bring the king into the game and to e3 to protect the pawn. And it's going to be hard for black to win, if not impossible. You need someone of like Kramnik or Karpov's technique to have any chance of winning it, and that'll be against another low rated. So I'd expect to draw this as white, but again it's pretty miserable because you're against a low rated expecting to win, and yet you're having to like fight for a draw from like an early on, which it doesn't help when you don't know enough opening theory, or don't have any books on d4 as white. Instead he plays an inaccuracy, maybe even letting white have a small advantage after rook takes c1, and now black plays knight fd5. Rook c8 is interesting, and in this position white has like to deal with 2 conflicting principles, because sometimes you'll have like, a lot of times you'll have 2 principles in conflict with each other. You have to decide which one's like the most relevant to the position, and you can do that by like candidating moves and weighing up pros and cons and got a bit of logical thinking. The point being is that I've just said that you shouldn't swap pieces off in these isolated pawn positions, but on the other hand the c-line have to be given up for that to be avoided. So I think the lesser of the 2 evils is to play rook takes c8, knight takes c8. This also displaces black's knight temporarily, so it's also good. f3, preparing king f2, king e3, knight d6, king f2, king f8, king e3, king e7, etc. with a likely draw ahead. White's bishop against knight counteracts the double pawn, I'd say, leading to probably a draw. But both sides will have their chances because there's an imbalance, because imbalances means chances of winning for both sides, whereas symmetry, let's say there was that the pawns are symmetrical and then swap my bishop for a knight, that'd almost certainly be a draw, but there's chances for both sides here. I don't know if any of us would fancy playing on, to be honest. I would now, but maybe not then with the form I was in. So knight fd5, Another reason for this early draw offer was to try and stop the rocks. I just lost 2 games quite badly on Saturday after that amazing win on Friday. I played knight e4. I think a5 is a good move here. And now we can do, there's a bit of analysis here for the first time in the game really. So let's see. Anything other than rook c8 seems to be a big advantage to white. Say knight c8. Then bishop takes d5, giving up the bishop, but this is another example of getting the bishop for a knight isn't that bad, but knight lands black with an isolated pawn of his own and also blocks any pressure on white's pawn. But even more importantly, it's a form of removing the guard. And after e takes d5, white has access to 7th rank with rook c7, and a rook on the 7th is more important than keeping that bishop, which also gets rid of a blockading knight. And next thing, black's dropping the pawn basically, because rook takes b7 and rook d7 takes d5 at 1m is going to occur. And then white's isolated pawn that couldn't move all of a sudden becomes a dangerous pass pawn. And black's going to be the one fighting for a draw and possibly losing. After also after a5 there's knight a8. But after bishop takes d5, e takes d5. Now c7 is covered, but after knight e2 just contrasts the knights. Black's knight's immobilised in the corner, can't come to b6 or c7, so it's dead. Whereas white's knight is going to come to f4, and then the rook's going to come to c5, and d5's dropping off, and again white's going to be off a pawn. So a5, rook c8 has to be played, and the best is actually knight e2. Black has to take. Knight takes c1, now knight back to c8. And after bishop takes d5, e takes d5. If you take stock of the position, a draw is very likely now, but because both sides have an isolated pawn, but maybe white has maybe slightly better winning chances due to black's fractured pawn structure, but white doesn't have a majority to compensate, that's the problem. And this knight endgame is almost certainly drawn. Players could agree to a draw now, but it'd be interesting to play out and improve endgames. So anyway, back to the game. I played knight e4 instead, and all of a sudden, because of black's inaccuracy on move 19, I've gained enough counterplay to hold the balance for my isolated pawn, and also maybe even have a very small advantage of a 10th of a pawn, which was confirmed by the engines. After knight f4, he punted the draw off of his own, because he realised he'd thrown away his winning chances, which he said after the game, and we both agreed to that, and the engines back us up, which is good to see. And he's threatening a fork with knight e2 check, but I can easily deal with it with king f1. And there's also some interesting moves like moving the rook to c7 and letting d4 pawn drop and then taking on b7 and getting a queenside pawn majority. I haven't actually really put any analysis for this, so maybe it's a good idea to look at through it yourself and it'll improve your chess as well and your positional and endgame technique. But after knight f4, I had a think and nearly declined it actually, despite being so keen for a draw 3 moves earlier, or maybe 2 moves earlier, depending on when it was. But in the end I accepted the draw offer, and I really sorry for this really boring 21 move draw, but I said I'd show all my games and I've done, as promised. This put me on 1.5 out of 4 and stopped the rots, but it is a lower rated, so unless I get a draw against a higher rated or a win against one around my own strength, I'm going to be losing even more points and crucify my grade even more. My target, my plan actually, after I got in the bad position in this game, was to hopefully win my last game with black pieces to get 2.5 out of 5 and another 50% in a major, which would be a good improvement, because this is a hard major. But anyway, can't say this is the most exciting game, but you'll still learn something from it, like how to deal with isolated pawns, for example, is a key theme. And please could you visit the Epic Chess Cafe on ChessQ, subscribe to the channel, like the Facebook page, follow us on Twitter. And more epic videos are coming, and round 5 will be out soon, which is more interesting, I'll tell you that. But for now, please leave any comments and thoughts. Thanks very much.